We are live. So good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, everyone. It's not afternoon yet. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we're really excited today to highlight a really amazing program. I'm going to get into that a little later, but first I want to give our classes a chance to say hi. So first, we've got Miss Bowles, grade 6s in London, Ontario.
Hi.
We've got audio on one screen, video on another, but they're excited. Hey, guys. And then we've got Ms. Levine's class, grade 6s in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Hi, guys. Awesome. All right. And of course, the reason you guys are here today, you guys came for a person named Dana. Well, Dana was a little sick today, so we welcomed back Dr. Parshati Patel. She has joined us for a bevy of sessions over the last few months, and she is an astrophysicist at Western Space in London, Ontario, so right next door to our London class today. She's going to explain a little bit about what she does, a little bit about some neat work generally at the Canadian Space Agency, and then we're going to dive into a really special program called Junior Astronauts. So this is an initiative of the Canadian Space Agency. I don't want to give too much away because I'll leave it to Dr. Patel, but without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Parshati, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today. Obviously, you guys are expecting Dana, who is an engineer by training and knows a lot about the engineering aspects of space. I'm taking over for him so, since he is sick. But I'll be talking about Canada in space. It's going to be all about Canadian contributions to space, and I'll highlight the 12, 13 that we think are really cool and that you all should know about. And then we'll dive into the Junior Astronauts activity. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am an astrophysicist by training. I studied massive stars for my master's and my PhD, and I studied how disks around them form and how that affects the formation of stars. But today, as I said, we're going to be talking about Canada, Canadian contributions to space. So I'm going to quickly bring up my presentation so you guys can see the beautiful pictures for Canadian contributions. So we will start all the way back with, the first contribution to space. Believe it or not, Canada was the third country in the world to launch a satellite in space. So that's after US and Russia. And that happened in 1962. So, when we think about what has Canada's legacy been, obviously we have the third one, but we'll talk about a few more ones, which, hopefully one of which you guys already know about. And obviously, our first satellite, Alouette-1, was launched in 1962. We kept working towards putting ourselves up in space. And, one of the most historic events in the space history has been the landing of Apollo 11. And in 1969, Canada was actually part of Apollo 11 mission. So the landing gear that you see right here actually was made by a Canadian company, Aerospace, in Quebec, so not very far from Ontario. And, we were part of that mission in many ways. Not a lot of people know about it. And I think that is a cool thing. Interestingly, one of the folks I met earlier in the summer said that it's actually Canadian legs that first landed on the moon rather than America landing on the moon, because the landing gear that touches the surface was the one that was created here in Canada. So a pretty neat fact to know about. Third really interesting, and I think the most famous contribution of Canada to space is the Canadarm. And it was actually launched in 1981, as you can see it right here. And it's also on our $5 note. If you have not ever opened it and have a look at the blue $5 note, and there's the Canadarm right there. It's actually, one of our key contributions to the International Space Station that till today allows us to send Canadian astronauts to space. But it also played a very important role in building the International Space Station. So the Canadarm actually allowed the assembly of the International Space Station, and till today actually catches a lot of the cargo that comes in, and the satellites that the astronauts then work on. And we will see different iterations throughout this presentations of the Canadarm, but the first one was launched in 1981. Older than a lot of the people in the room. The next one, something I should mention after the Canadarm that came that I don't have in this presentation, but I find it pretty cool, was the first Canadian astronaut, who's our current transportation minister, Marc Garneau, was the first Canadian in space in 1984. And you look at the thing on the slide that says Canadian Space Agency was established in 1989. So we actually sent our astronaut even before the Canadian Space Agency was established. What the Space Agency actually does, it allows for a lot of civilian space-related activities to happen, and they make it happen. So pretty interesting. Obviously, after Marc Garneau, the first Canadian woman to go in space was our current Governor General, Julie Payette. And she actually became the first Canadian on the International Space Station in 1999. So it's pretty unique, and something, who I admire a lot. And hopefully you guys also admire a lot about first Canadian woman in space. The next one, in year 2000, Canada actually joined European and French space agencies to use satellites to help during crisis. So imagine, if there's a hurricane somewhere, there's a disaster, and you need emergency deployment of, people who can go and help in this crisis situation. We are actually part of this European, along with European and French space agency in this International Charter of Space and Major Disaster to actually activate our satellites to ensure that we have coverage, we can see what is going on there, and we can deploy the help based on those information. And Canada actually has a lot of satellites that help look back on Earth. So, we have satellites that we can look at Canada of how it, has evolved over time. We can look back and look at things like deforestation. We can look at how glaciers have, evolved in the last few decades. We have a lot of those technologies that we actually use to look back on Earth, not just for Canada, but other countries as well. So the next interesting fact, and believe it or not, it was Chris Hadfield who actually did the first Canadian spacewalk in 2001, and he actually attached Canadarm2. So as I said earlier, the first Canadarm was, first launched into space in 1981. There have been iterations and additions to the Canadarm, and Canadarm2 was one of them. And believe it or not, it was Chris Hadfield who did it. So, Canadian putting Canada up under the International Space Station. But as we move along, and as I said, after Canadarm2, there came Dexter. So if you look at my pointer right here, Dexter is actually one of the most advanced technologies that we as Canada have put up into space. And it helps maintain the International Space Station. It's sometimes called the handyman of space because that's what it does. It basically helps fix things on the International Space Station without actually having the astronauts go out. So basically they sit inside this International Space Station and let the Canadarm and the Dexter move around and fix things around the International Space Station. So that's pretty cool. Next one is the application of Canadarm. And I know, like, when we'll talk about Dragon's Den, there is a lot of things, a lot of people generally also ask a lot of questions on, why are we investing in space? What does that give us here on Earth? And NeuroArm, which was derived from the technology that was developed for Canadarm, Dexter, and Canadarm2, NeuroArm actually allows doctors to perform surgeries with this robotic arm that can do more precise surgery than a human can. And, it was developed in 2008, and they actually worked on a 21-year-old patient on their brain. So you can imagine when you're working with the brain, you have to be very careful to ensure that you're not touching any nerves, you're not damaging anything, and robots have been proven to be very precise compared to humans. And Canadarm provided that first initial idea of coming up with this neural arm, and the company that developed this actually took all the learnings from the Canadarm and applied it to build this really awesome neural arm, which is now being deployed in many different places around the world, including Canada. And it's not just Canadarms and robotics that we do in space. There's a lot more things that we contribute to. The Mars Curiosity rover actually has a Canadian tech on itself. So here is a selfie of the Mars Curiosity rover, and it has what we called alpha particle X-ray spectrometer. Basically what it does, it determines the chemical makeup of rocks, okay, and soil, and provides us with the clues of whether or not the soil that is on Mars is habitable or not, whether we could find life there or not. So pretty important part of the different instruments that are on the Curiosity rover, and the fact that there is a Canadian instrument on it. It's pretty cool. And Curiosity rover is working fine, and it's doing its job on Mars as we work here on our daily lives. Next, pretty important day for Canadians, or Canadian Space Agency and everyone who works there, was in 2012 when Chris Hadfield actually became the first Canadian commander on the International Space Station. And what a commander does on the International Space Station, he has to make sure that the crew is safe, the International Space Station is safe, make sure the daily activities are being run as planned. He also has to ensure all the scientific experiments are taking place as they were planned or scheduled. So that's a lot of responsibility in addition to just being an astronaut and performing your normal duties as you would when you're in the International Space Station. And this was also the time when he got involved in a lot of social media. So you would see him online posting pictures when he was up on the International Space Station. He had exchanges with a lot of actors, William Shatner, Star Trek actors, and he also, sang the song while he was up there, David Bowie's song. So, he did quite a lot of, he generated a lot of interest for people in the space, just, having that Canadian up in space. That I remember his pictures from the time when he was up there. I still look back at a lot of his images that he has posted on social media. And then the second last one that we're going to actually talk about is the CubeSat project. So in 2018, 15 teams from across Canada were chosen by the Canadian Space Agency to build small satellites. So CubeSat is a cube satellite, so a small satellite that is 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter in size. And they're pretty neat in a way that they are so small, but they can actually house things that people, students, undergraduate students and high school students can actually build the CubeSat and, include various experiments like looking back at Earth, measuring temperature, pressure, a lot of these different things in the atmosphere. And Western was one of the many teams who were actually chosen to be part of this 15 student teams that are going to send their CubeSats to the International Space Station in 2022, where they're going to be launched from. So it's a pretty neat initiative where they're involving students to be part of this, part of the Canadian contribution to space. And then last but not the least, actually one of my most favorite ones is earlier in 2009, so in February, our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he actually announced that Canada will be part of the next big thing that is going to happen in space. So the International Space Station goes around Earth, monitors the Earth. We do a lot of experiments. Now what NASA is doing is that they're going to take the same idea to Moon. So they're going to have this International Space Station kind of station. It's not going to be the same size. It's actually going to be 1/3 the size of the International Space Station, but it is going to be a continuous working laboratory around the Moon. And that laboratory will house, a lot of experiments. It's going to be inhabited by humans 5 to 6 months of the year, not the entire time, sometimes less. And it's going to also help us deploy scientific experiments on the surface of the moon. And the best part about it is we are known for our technology, the robotic arm or the Canadarm that we, currently still works on the International Space Station. We're going to be providing Canadarm3 to the NASA-led Lunar Gateway project. That's what it's called. And we are also going to be providing the artificial intelligence needed, because you can imagine if there's a working space station throughout the year, but you only have humans on the certain part of the year, you still need technology to keep those experiments going that you have, planted, and then you want the next set of astronauts to come back and check them. But you also still want to make sure that the experiments are working fine, the conditions are correct, et cetera, et cetera. And we will be building that technology for the Lunar Gateway. And so we're really excited. However, once it's deployed, it's going to be running for a number of years, and we're going to be needing a lot of engineers, scientists, and a lot of power, manpower, human power to be working towards this particular project, and furthermore projects maybe around Mars. And so that kind of brings me to our lovely Junior Astronaut project, which we actually announced as part of the Lunar Gateway project by the Prime Minister, was to ensure that we have the workforce that we need for the next generation to be taking over the Lunar Gateway project, and hopefully Martian Gateway project that will come along in that 2030s. And so what they're currently doing is they're looking for junior astronauts like you. And through doing a series of activities, you can actually qualify to go to do a summer camp at the Canadian Space Agency, learn from the astronauts and the space experts at the headquarters. I got to go to the headquarters earlier this year for the first time, and I was blown away by how excited I was to just be in presence of all of these people who work at the space agency. So I'm sure, any of you who will be able to go to that will have a once in a lifetime experience of going to a summer camp at the Canadian Space Agency. I have said this before. I'm sure me and Jesse agrees with me that we have never had this experience or an opportunity to experience something like this. So you guys are very lucky to be in the right time and right frame to be able to actually apply to go to this summer camp. But in addition, even if you just do one activity, which I'll propose one today, you can actually put yourself into a draw for a visit for an astronaut or space expert from the space agency to come to your school. So that is still an incredible opportunity for an entire school if you're able to win that opportunity to have an astronaut come to you. Something I highlighted earlier was that, when people think about sending an astronaut to space, they think it's only one person who goes up there. It's actually a host of people that help this one particular astronaut when they're up there, actually hundreds of people here on the surface of Earth. And so I wanted to kind of highlight some of the, professions that people are actually working in that help just in general, learning more about space, and especially when you send astronauts to the space station or just in space in general. You can be an engineer and still be part of space, an astrophysicist, and still be part of space. You could be a flight controller. You could be a geologist, a kinesiologist, a doctor, a mathematician. There are so many amazing careers that you could have in space domain. And as I say always, space is very interdisciplinary. We are super lucky to be living in a time where we have access to so many technologies and so much knowledge that space kind of brings everything together. So you could be in law and still love space. You could be an artist and still love space, and you could do experiments in space. I just wanted to highlight some of these careers that you could have in space domain. All right, so are you guys ready for the activity?
I'm ready for the activity. Let's do it.
Let's roll in. Okay, looks like I got a thumbs up from some of the some of the students. All right, so the Dragon's Den activity is pretty interesting, and I have sat through some of these before, and what it really does is, I don't know how many of you have seen the Dragon's Den show that actually happens on TV, but the idea is to think about an innovative project or technology, and I'll give you guys different panels that you could actually do, but you have to come up with this idea and then pitch it to someone. So this activity is very critical when you think about developing your communication skills. How are you going to pitch your amazing idea that you need someone to invest money and make sure that it happens? There's a lot of skills that you need to, A, first of all, work with your team members, and then B, find a way to communicate it effectively. So we're going to have 4 different panels. So if you haven't done this, I would highly recommend you guys to kind of, divide the class into different panels. So you will see all these different technologies that you can come up with. The first one is actually an astronaut panel. So you have to come up with new ideas on how you could help an astronaut live, work, or study in space. And then you pitch it to a panel of astronauts. And this could be, could be your teacher, it could be a host of different students and or your classmates. And you have to convince them that, hey, you have come up with an idea that is going to be budget friendly, that's going to help the astronauts, and it's going to be something that you will be able to actually do it. And, I've kind of noted a few things you could consider, making sure that is practical, making sure that they have applications, and you could, if you want, you could use the already existing technology and come up with a new idea of how to use it. So that's one of the things. I'll give you an example of the one that I saw earlier in the year. Was, someone thought about using the virtual reality aspect and giving astronauts a feel of home again. Because you can imagine if they were to go to Mars, they will be on a spacecraft for a very, very long time, and they're going to miss Earth. So using virtual reality to give them the senses of being home can actually help their psychological health. So think about those ideas of how could you help an astronaut. Okay, another panel that you could do is an engineering panel where you're coming up with a new technology that could help any kind of mission. It could be something to the International Space Station, it could be something to look at planets or stars, or it could be, a telescope that you can put on the moon or Mars, any kind of technology that you can think of. And then you have to convince Canadian Space Agency to fund your project, which is very, very hard. Okay, so you have to think about many different ways. How can you use the already existing technology to make it something different? Or how do you use something that you're going to create not only for studying space, but also for something here on Earth? So those are the things that you need to think about on how that will be helpful to the existing technology and or future technology. Okay, so we have 2 more panels. You guys have 4 to choose from, so that's pretty neat. Another one is political panel. And, I have experienced this personally on convincing politicians on why exploring space is important and what can exploring space do for, Canadians or humans here on Earth. And so you need to think about a technology, think about things such as how can space technology help people here on Earth? Why investing money in space projects can be helpful, not only now, but also in future. And then you have to pitch it to a set of people who will be very hard on you on why it matters to people, why it matters to Canadians. So think about, a lot of the things that I said about Canadian contributions to space actually has a lot of those things that you need in order to convince a politician on why it's important to fund new space technology or a new space project. Okay. Now, last but not the least is the industry panel. Believe it or not, in last, I guess, a decade or two, space industry is the privatized space industry has been booming. Example, SpaceX, right? They are working towards creating these, they have already created reusable rockets, and they're working towards creating almost airplane industry kind of industry where you're sending humans to for space travel, just like you would go on a holiday to Mexico, right? So you think about yourself as, someone who has this amazing idea, and you're going and pitching to these billionaires who have a lot of money, and asking them to invest in your idea, and making sure that you are convincing them, because you have to think about what your audience is thinking. As if I was a billionaire, I would think about where I'm going to spend my money and why, right? I would spend my money if I'm going to make a lot of profit. And sometimes, depending on who the CEOs are, they might also think about how it's going to impact other people. So think about, those kinds of things when you're thinking about pitching it to CEOs. And other thing is, what kind of resources does space offer CEOs rather than just you as someone who's really interested in exploring space? So, all of these different aspects is something that can help you. So if you have not already done this, I would, give you guys some time, if I had time, if I was in your classroom, to actually choose one of these panels, form a group, think about ideas that you can pitch, and then, maybe have the other group be the astronaut or the engineering panel or the politician panel. And, some things I would say to keep in mind when you're thinking about these projects to pitch is remember who your audience is. If you're pitching to the politician, it's completely different than pitching to CEOs, because CEOs care more about profit, politicians care more about what it works for people, right? Think about who your audience is. And, as science communicator, both Jesse and I would probably agree, our number one goal when we talk to people is, who are we talking to? What would be interesting to the audience that we are in front of. So think about that and think about what they would want to hear. Maybe they want to hear numbers. Maybe they want to hear, quotes from people, or think about, how someone would like it laid out. Scientists love graph. They would love to look at numbers. It might not work for politicians. Maybe they want to look at what others have said about your idea. And then CEOs love to look at dollar values of things. So think about those ideas when you're thinking about them. And last but not the least, aim to impress them. That's actually one of the most important things. Okay, so I'm hoping that you guys will be doing this activity, and I would love to hear more about this. If you guys, whether or not you guys, what kind of ideas you have, and if you plan to pitch, what would those be? So thank you, and I will take any questions you guys have.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Patel. And yeah, so for our classes, there's a bevy of things you can do here. You can work as a class to come up with some ideas that you'd like to pitch. You can think of why you'd like to pitch one of the panels over some of the other ones. You can ask about Canadian exploration of space. So it's a kind of a unique session in that you have multiple options here, and you can just ask questions about the program generally. If you guys want to learn more about junior astronauts, by all means, go ahead. But as Dr. Patel said, it's a really exciting time to be in Canadian space. You guys are right about the right age group that'll be going to Mars, it'll be going to the moon. And so this opportunity is a really unique chance to get going with that sort of on that path. Dr. Patel, do you want to come out of screen share just so we can see you? That would be great. And then, yeah, guys, we're going to take questions. We've got a group on YouTube, a couple of groups on YouTube as well. So if you guys want to type in your questions, just let me know where you're joining from and I'll share them. But yeah, let's dive in. I'm going to start with Ms. Ball's class, and if you guys want to kick us off with a question, come on up. Let's see. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
Okay, so my class has been working on junior astronauts, and Ms. Patel, she talked about the AV, and it was my group that we had come up with that. I'm sorry with the echo.
That's okay.
Yeah, it was the VR, and one of my students was showing it to you because he was wearing it. We we planned it and we coded it in Expedition, and that's what he did. Put it on. Put it on.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, let's get that up on the screen. What do we got?
So he's wearing the VR, and can you see it? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just ask a question, just because there is a bit of reverb. So it's VR headset, and then what specifically is it for? Is it for people on the space station? Is they're going to Mars? What's going on with this? Is it the thing that was pitched that Dr. Patel got already?
For the people on ISS, we
Yeah.
coded on expedition their own family or their favorite spots, and they can watch it. It will help them calm down, or they will be using it when they're lonely. Because we learned that this is one of the main things that astronauts face. They are lonely on ISS.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's really, really cool. And again, Dr. Patel actually mentioned that during our session, which is great. So that's the neat thing about space, Antarctica, other remote regions around the world, is that when you go there, you're alone. Like, these are fantastic adventures, but you don't actually get the opportunity to see your family, to see green. This is something that I find really interesting from astronauts and Antarctic explorers, that they come back and they really missed the color green. They really missed plants. Like, these are the things we take for granted here in London, Thunder Bay, Toronto. But it's a really, really neat thing. So way to go, guys. Very cool. All right. I'll come back to you guys in a second if there's any other ideas you guys want to share as a class or any other questions you have. But yeah, let's head to Miss Levine's class and get you up. And we're gonna do the mic muting. We're gonna try and make it work. It's gonna be fun. So yeah, go right ahead. Tell us about your invention.
All right, so we have a student here. Oh boy. Okay, sorry, I turned it off. The other one, that was awful. Okay, so we have a student here who is going to pitch a very similar invention to the other one that the other class did.
Hi, my name is Leanna, and my product is called Space. You know how astronauts cannot communicate with their family while they're in space? Well, now they can with Space.
Sorry, guys.
Space is a virtual reality experience that utilizes a headset that goes on your face so that you can FaceTime with your family and friends on Earth. Attached to the headset, there's a microphone, so you can also talk to your family. I find that my product would help astronauts connect with their family while they're away on a long trip. It would also help astronauts not feel as isolated in space. The astronauts could also use Space virtual reality equipment to visit other locations on Earth so that they are not feeling so confined to the spaceship. They could also use this product during exercise while on the spaceship. Think you can't go for a jog on the beach while traveling through space? Well, now you can. Connect to your family and favorite locations on Earth using Space virtual reality technology.
This is
amazing. Yeah,
They love it.
that was awesome. Yeah, Dr. Patel said it too, and we've got 3 mics, there's reverb, but that's really, really cool. Yeah, I'll mute myself. Dr. Patel, what do you think?
how it involves the virtual reality aspect, and it's very true actually that as you go further away from Earth, there's a time delay. Even for the moon, there's a 1.3 second time delay. So if I say something, it takes 1.3 seconds to get there. So if you're going to Mars, you're definitely going to need something, when you're talking to your friends. The normal way of how we Skype or Zoom now is not going to work. So, virtual reality, I absolutely love this idea. And I love how, you are detailed enough to talk about the headset and everything. So you have thought out this really well. And, I would love to see this technology actually go up to the International Space Station.
Super cool. And so I love the detail of one of the pitches, and then that the other class actually made the device already. Way to go, guys. So Miss Ball's class, I'm going to come back to you guys. You guys have another student up, and then we'll alternate between the two. If you guys have any ideas, I'd also like to hear which panel you guys are pitching these to of the 4. I'm really curious. So Miss Ball's group, I'm going to demute your mic and then bring up your screen.
Wait, hello. Hello?
Hi. Yeah, you're good.
Hi. So about last week we had a space lunch, so we brought in all dehydrated fruit and.
Ooh. Okay, so Miss Ballard, actually really briefly, Miss Ballard, if you want to mute your mic on your computer, that might help. That's what Miss Levine did, and that should do it. So mute the mic in your computer, and then I'll come back in 2 seconds to hear what you have to say on the phone. Okay? Try now.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, it's not the projector, guys. It's the actual audio in your computer. But okay, how about this? Because I want to get all you guys are trying to tell us, but try and, you know what? I'll head back to Miss Levine for a second. Type it in. We'll see if we can get the audio going, and then we'll make it work. But yeah, another thing. Sorry, I want to highlight something, and Dr. Patel mentioned this as well. But it's really neat to be able to play the role of the people you're pitching to as well. Like, this is a really neat debate exercise, and this is something you guys are going to experience more in late high school. So Canadian Space Agency, really neat grade 6 level that you guys are going to be dealing with this, but you guys can play the role of the investor, of the CEO, of the politician, and that's something that's a fairly unique experience. So Miss Bala, try and type it in. I'll come back in a minute. Miss Levine, I'm going to come back to you and mute myself, and we should be good. All the tech difficulties, it keeps it fun. Okay, so yeah, go ahead, guys, and let me mute myself right now.
Hi, my name is Angelina, and my product is called Real Food. Real Food is a 3D printer for astronauts up in space. Isn't it hard having such limited food options and having all your food freeze-dried? Well, here's your solution. Real Food can create a wide variety of culinary delights that meet all of the astronauts' nutritional needs through 3D food printing technology. Tired of the same old space food? Real Food 3D printer is the machine of the future that will satisfy all your cravings. Buy one today.
I love that buy one today is at the end of that. That was awesome, Angelina. Way to go. And yeah, so that's not only a cool invention in and of itself. I'll turn it over to Dr. Patel to say what she thinks too. But I want to mention there are 3 streams. So when you guys are doing these junior astronaut activities, there's science and technology. So that's something that's really important to astronauts as they go to space, science and technology. There's fitness and nutrition. So astronauts need to be fit. They need to be healthy. They need to have all the things that you were mentioning right there. And this would be a great product to help them with that. And then teamwork and communication. Astronauts are some of the most friendly, wonderful people. They're like the creme de la creme of humanity. And they're like that because they get along with people in the most difficult of circumstances. Because when you're on a giant rocket ship, it can be very difficult to be friendly with the person beside you when things are starting to go wrong. So that's a great mix of all those things and fantastic. Dr. Patel, what do you think about it all?
I absolutely love it. I just made me think of Star Trek, or not. And I've always thought about whether or not that would be something that, would be deployed to International Space Station, is to print out food. There is a 3D printer on the International Space Station, which is pretty neat. But I would absolutely, if I were to ever go to space, would love to have some really good food, because that again is also related to the psychological health of the astronauts, because eating the food that makes you feel like you're home, makes you feel happy, and makes you feel like you're back home again, right? So if in long-term flights that they will have to Mars and back, this would be something that would be crucial for the mental health of the astronauts. So amazing idea. I look forward to you actually making that 3D printer, and then someday me flying to space and using that.
Very cool. And by the way, so you mentioned, you passed along this list earlier in the presentation of all these great jobs you can have in space. And so we mentioned, things as diverse as artist, lawyer, what have you. Nutritionist is a really big part of this. So space food has become way better than it was in the Apollo days, to the point where now it's not quite as good as food at home, but it's about as good as it's ever been. For the classes, I really encourage you guys, this is a weird note, I encourage you guys to go to a grocery store today or sometime soon and get something called Tang. It's like a powdered orange drink, and it's like the original space drink. So if you want to drink something that was originally designed for space, go get some Tang. It's really good. It's really sugary. It's fantastic. All right. I'm going to try again with Miss Bala's class. So you guys wrote it down. I want to see if we can get it where you're saying it, because it's much better to say it. So I'm going to bring up your audio again. We'll see if we can get this working. I'm sorry for the trouble, guys. And I'm going to unmute myself unmute you guys right now.
Hello?
It's so iffy. So you know what? I'll put it on your screen, and then I'll see you guys, and we can mention. So You had a space lunch with your Space Flyers group, super cool. And one of the things that came up with is need for fresh food. You guys, I love the similarities here. We got fresh food, we got VR, we got all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah. So, and you mentioned something called Tomato Sphere. So this is a program that's really neat, and Dr. Patel is nodding her head. A group called Let's Talk Science all across Canada, fantastic organization, partners really closely with the Space Agency to bring back seeds that were actually on the ISS and see how they'll grow here at home. So I love that. You guys talk about hydroponics, green leafy vegetables. So again, you're highlighting, in fact, I'll turn it over to Dr. Patel. What do you think of hydroponics, other ways of getting food to the space station?
I think it is great. And as I said, having fresh food, having food that reminds us of home is pretty important. You can imagine on a flight, even just to Mars, let's say you're going to stay there for 6 months or on your plan to inhabit Mars, you cannot carry all the food from Earth. Currently, we carry everything that we need from here to the International Space Station, but there's only so much of that you could do. There is a time when we have to start making sure that A, we can get water from where we are, and B, grow food where we are. So, this amazing ideas of growing food in space, hydroponics, there are a lot of these different ways they're trying to ensure that we get as nutritious food and fresh food like we do here on Earth. So another amazing idea. I love this. I can just sit here, do this all day.
Well, we've actually got a question from a kid in Miss Levine's class, so I'm going to mute myself again, bring them up, get a question in, and then we're almost at time. Like, we've covered so many great ideas here. We've covered junior astronauts as a program, so we'll take the question and then I'll ask something. We'll just wrap it all up and we'll finish from there. But yeah, come on up, guys. Go for it.
We were wondering if Canada is part of any other big space projects that are happening currently.
Unmute myself.
Okay. Yeah, so in addition to the International Space Station, which we have been part for a very, very long time, we're actually part of the OSIRIS-REx mission. It's a mission to an asteroid. We are also part of Mars 2020. We are definitely part of the Lunar Gateway, and we are, working towards newer technologies that we can involve in a lot of these different missions that are happening. And there are, if you want to visit, there are way more contributions than what I described. I just picked the 1213, or we just picked the 1213 because one of my staff members helped me make this, but there are tons more. If you want to go to spacematters.ca/Canada in space, and you can see the entire timeline, there's much more contributions to various missions that we have done up until now. And as I mentioned, Curiosity mission is still working, and our instrument that we provided as Canadians is still working on Curiosity rover on Mars. So yeah, we are still contributing, and we hope to keep doing that in at least few decades, because we have now committed to the Lunar Gateway project.
Very cool. You guys actually can look at one of our past videos with a woman named Dr. Farah Alibay, and so she's an engineer at NASA working on some of these amazing technologies. I also encourage all the classes to look up a woman named Natalie Pennock. She's right here in Ontario. She's one of the best science communicators in Canada. She's really fantastic, and she's an engineer building some of the stuff that's going to go to Mars and beyond in the coming years. So yeah, with that said, I know we could take questions all day, we could share ideas, and these are really great starts. So I really encourage all the students in all the classes, come up with ideas, pitch them to your colleagues, pitch them to your friends. And Dr. Patel, so I want to ask, if you guys if the classes want to win a visit from an astronaut or want to get a chance to go to space camp, when can they actually submit these on the site?
So starting January, you should be able to submit your, teachers should be able to submit that they have done this activity in the classroom, and then the students will be able to submit if they have done 3 activities, 1 in each stream. You should be able to apply for the summer camp as well, starting January. So look for that in the new year.
Yeah, and then again, so 1 activity gets you the chance to win a visit from an astronaut, and 3 activities, 1 in each stream, gives you the chance as a student to go to space camp. Yeah. Oh, we've got another, sorry, I want to pass along the note. We've got, I know I'm wrapping up, but from you guys, send messages to astronauts on ISS via Raspberry Pi for Christmas and New Year's. Awesome. So Dr. Patel, can you explain a little bit about sending messages to space and why that's so important, and Raspberry Pi, if you know a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Am I unmute? Yes. Yeah, so sending messages to the astronauts up in the space station, especially during Christmas time, is very important because imagine, again, they are up there by themselves, a couple people at a time away from their family. It's just like, wanting to make sure that they get the messages like you do, in your, whether it's by card or by phone or by text. And something that I recently learned about is that you can actually work with an amateur radio clubs all around the world, and you can actually talk to the astronauts up on the International Space Station, and sometimes just sit there and listen into their chat that is happening, which is, I think, pretty cool. I haven't done it through Raspberry Pi, but I know that the radio clubs, amateur radio clubs, do help schools and students to do that in the classrooms as well. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. So yeah, guys, check in January for how you can submit these projects. Keep it up. Do some other amazing projects. That's actually worth noting. So we did one with Dr. Patel recently, which was another one of the Junior Astronauts program, Patchmaker. On the 10th, we've got Survivor Moon going on, and then we'll be doing more in January and February leading up to the March deadline. So get really excited about that. We'd love to have you guys participate in more sessions. And yeah, with that said, as you guys may know, at the end of every session, we just turn it over to you to say a quick thank you to Dr. Patel. I know there's some audio, so we're going to have some wicked reverb here, but Miss Levine's class, Miss Ball's class, you are both demuted if you want to say thank you to Parshati.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Patel, that was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a lovely rest of your day, everyone, and bye for now, guys.